Okay, good morning. Um, my name is Sandra Watts with United Policyholders, and welcome. We're going to spend a couple hours this morning talking about Reconstruction, pricing disputes, and resolving disputes with your insurer. I'm going to go through a little bit of housekeeping here just so everybody is up to speed. Can everybody hear me? I'm going to assume, unless you chat in, that everybody can hear okay. So I have a PowerPoint presentation this morning that I'm going to go through. We generally like to leave the questions till the end, but this is a very interactive course. So I'm going to encourage you guys to either do a chat at the bottom where it says, I think it says Q&A or chat. We'll see them. You can type your questions in there. If it's a really long question, you can raise your hand virtually. And I can see that here, and we can, so it's a little button, and I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it's in the, maybe Mark can help us with that when he gets on here, but there is a way to virtually raise your hand. I can't see any of you guys, so you can only see me. Sorry about that. So I can't see any of you, so just so you know that. This isn't like a meeting where we can see everybody. It's a webinar where just the presenters and the panelists are able to be seen. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start my slideshow. There's Mark here, and I'm going to start my slideshow because our introductions are in there. I'm going to let him talk a little bit. So let's go.
You should be able to find the raise hand function if you look under participants, and for us it's a little bit different, but you should all be able to see it through participants, and then at the bottom, at least that's where it's showing for us, there's invite, mute, raise hand. So it should be somewhat similar.
Yeah, I don't know, mine looks a little bit different. Oh, under more. Okay, so let's get into here. Whoopsie, get rid of that. Move. Zoom always has the things exactly where I need to see. Okay, so welcome. Hopefully you've all here for the right webinar, Resolving Reconstruction Pricing Disputes. My name is Sandra Watts, and I am a Roadmap to Recovery Program Specialist with United Policyholders. My background is in insurance claims and claims management. I'm not a lawyer. We'll get to the lawyer next, but so I do claims consulting and expert witness, and I specialize in property insurance claims issues. So I've been on both sides of the situation that you guys are dealing with, and so hopefully I can give you some insight and help you through that. I'd like to introduce you to Mark Dillman, who is our staff attorney. Mark, have a little.
Thanks, Sandy. Thanks, everybody. Also work at United Policyholders, and I'll just be bugging Sandy, and I'm going to be helping manage some questions. So if you see something come across and you can immediately answer, I'll abruptly interrupt Sandy and get that out. But if we know she's going to cover it later in the PowerPoint, I'll shoot a little message. So again, yeah, thank you for the introduction, Sandy.
Okay, great. So let's talk a little bit about United Policyholders. Hopefully you guys all knew about us before. I apologize to the people. I see a whole bunch of people who have been on a lot of my webinars. Thank you for coming back. We appreciate working with you. Hopefully we're helpful to you. But United Policyholders we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We are in all 50 states, and we're a voice for an information resource for insurance consumers in all 50 states. We are located here in San Francisco, in my backdrop. That's not actually behind me right now. And we've been around since the Oakland Hills fires in 1991. Our executive director, Amy Bach, who many of you probably know, is a co-founder of United Policyholders, and she has been running this organization for years and really working hard to try to bring some help to consumers. We're funded entirely by grants and donations, so we don't accept any money from insurance companies. I'm thinking that I'm a little dark, so hold on, I'm gonna turn on a light. Hopefully that's a little bit better. Okay, a little bit better lighting. I should have checked that earlier. And we have a huge volunteer group who, people like you who years after their disaster comes back and says, you know, that they were grateful for what we helped them with, and then they help us. You might have met some at the LACs or in different places throughout this journey. This particular webinar, we opened up to the entire state. So probably, as I'm looking at the list, the majority of you who I know are campfire survivors, but I see some other people from around the state as well. Okay. So I'm going to say a little bit about the Q&A. We got a question from Freda. This webinar today is going to be pretty strictly building reconstruction pricing disputes. We've got a kind of a lot of information. It's going to be a really hands-on thing. This is a question about loss of use, about additional living expenses. And we might slip some of that in, but those kind of questions are probably more appropriate for, I have a twice a month webinar that I do. The next one is next Thursday at 6 o'clock, and it is called Your Claim Questions Answered. So it's a sort of more of a free-for-all. What we do is we have questions sent in to info@uphelp.org, and I form my whole webinar around your questions. So sorry about that, Freda, but we're probably not going to get to loss of use today. Okay, and I'll go
about that webinar as an answer to that question.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Awesome. Okay, so fine print. This workshop is intended to be general guidance. It's not legal advice. We don't give legal advice, even though Mark's a lawyer. If you have a specific legal question, we recommend that you consult an attorney. And then we don't have any speakers today. Okay, so here's what we're going to have on today's agenda. Okay, what we want to do is we want to help you help yourself break through these log jams, okay? And when I say that, I'm gonna mean the difference between what your insurance company believes they owe you for your dwelling, okay? We're gonna stick pretty much to the dwelling, and what it's gonna actually cost to repair or replace the home you lost, okay? So that's what we wanna do. We wanna maximize the recovery that you're entitled to under your policy that you purchased for this purpose. Okay, and to do that, we're going to talk about understanding your policy limits, understanding the insurer paperwork, because if you haven't done this before, it's quite a lot of new information. The key thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to fix your insurance company's scope and estimate, how to obtain a comprehensive estimate that your insurer can understand, and how to be persistent in your follow-up to get paid. Okay. So hopefully that's what you're all here for, and that's what we're going to really focus on. Okay, so to get right into it, let's talk about coverage A. And the reason that we focus mainly on coverage A, as you guys know, is that things like your other structures, dwelling extensions are called a couple different things, but your outbuilding coverage is generally limited to 10% of your coverage A. So most of you who have lost your homes have been paid the maximum. However, if you haven't, all this information can go directly, it can be applied to any of the coverages if you need it, okay? So the first thing you need to do, and hopefully you guys are already here, but I like to be systematic, is do the math and know your limits, okay? So know what your coverage A limits are for your main dwelling, and know whether or not you have extended replacement cost coverage, okay? So let's talk about that really quickly. Most of the policies which you guys will have are called replacement cost policies, okay? It's very confusing for consumers because many people assume that, replacement cost means, okay, so if I lose my house, you'll replace it. Well, it doesn't really mean that. It means that you are, and I'll get to what it means more, but it doesn't mean straight out, lose your house, get it replaced. The policy is subject to limits, okay? And in this case, we're going to be talking about your coverage A limits, and it's subject to different policy provisions regarding depreciation and things like that, okay? So extended replacement cost is a second coverage, basically. It's a second coverage limit on your coverage A dwellings. It's usually expressed as a percentage, okay? 25, 50, 100. I've seen some policies that have 200%, which is amazing. So this is intended specifically for situations like most of you are in, where there's a mass wildfire, which drives up the cost of labor and materials, and causes the cost to rebuild your house increases dramatically over what it would have been if it had just been a single house fire, okay? So these were added on. Look at your debris removal coverage. You guys have gone into a lot of that with your various towns and municipalities. We're going to talk about code upgrade coverage, and then you've got some trees, shrubs, and plants coverage. I'm not going to really touch on trees, shrubs, and plants other than to say, read your policy. I get a lot of questions about whether in the campfire, whether or not the mandated tree removal is covered under debris removal or code and ordinance. It's almost never covered under code and ordinance because that coverage is very closely tied to buildings. And trees, shrubs, and plants has a specific limit. So unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of uncovered losses for the removal of trees up on the ridge. So I'm sorry to say that. These policies really weren't meant to cover properties like that. They were really devised for like suburban, you know, a house and a little regular yard. So unfortunately, they haven't changed too much over the years. Okay, so let's move on. I just want to show you, hold on, I'm going to drink my water on the side here. I'm going to show you just, this is a sample declarations policy. You guys are far enough in it. The reason that I'm showing you guys all this now, because most of you have been in this for at least a year and a half, almost 2 years, is that I've talked to a fair number of people recently who were not aware of their extended replacement coverage. Their adjuster did not tell them that it was available, and they didn't know, which to me, they have a duty to tell you. They have a duty to explain the policy coverages, benefits, and limits. So I do think that that's a big problem, but I wanted to show you how these break down. So this is coverage A dwelling. This is your other structures, your detached garages, your fences. Each policy has a different definition for other structures. So you have to look at your policy. And then we have personal property, loss of use. Okay, so when you get down here, your extended replacement cost coverage could be called a lot of different things. This one in particular is called limited home replacement cost coverage. It could be called extended replacement cost coverage. There's a lot of different names, but it's usually expressed right here, 100% and 50% of coverage A on this policy, okay? So that means once you exhaust this limit, you have another 150% of coverage A to go towards your claim. Okay, and you have to read it to see how it is. Some of them it's 150, some of these, the way they're written, it's actually 50% more. And then right here is your building code upgrade limit. This one is expressed as a dollar amount. Many of them are expressed as percentages. So you just have to look at your policy and see what it is on your policy, okay? This is just a little example of all the different buckets that you have, and we do talk about buckets. It's just sort of an easy way to do it. And there is, I believe, some legislation going on about combining your buckets, but unfortunately, it's probably not going to be retroactive. So for your purposes right now, this would be how it would be. So this would be your basic coverage A. This would be your extended replacement cost, other structures, trees, shrubs, debris removal, contents debris, contents coverage, okay? It kind of tells you how to get to it. So I like to use a little chart, know your limits, okay? Something like this. This is just so that you have it. Your adjuster should provide you with something like this. So hopefully you're all getting it. As your claim goes along, there would be limits and then amount paid, amount available, and so forth. So hopefully you guys are seeing something like this that has all of your coverages. Okay, so let's get into the estimating part, okay? Sorry, why it's so dark today. Try raising it up here. Okay, so the dwelling claim process generally begins hopefully with an insurer preparing a scope of loss on your destroyed property. Now some insurers, so the law in California, unless your house burned this year, and I don't think we have any of those, the law in California says that the initial payment to an insured after this type of disaster is one of two things. It's either the fair market value of the home you lost right before it happened. So if they got an appraisal that tells you, okay, your house was worth, $400,000 the day before the loss. So they could pay you that. If your policy limit is less, then they only pay up to the policy limit. But the other way that they're allowed to do it is replacement cost less depreciation, okay? The law as of January of this year has changed so that replacement cost less depreciation is the only measure that they're allowed to use. Again, not retroactive. So if your insurer made their initial payment from a appraisal, then we would have they can do that until later. I want to see, for some reason I can't. I've got to bring the hands up. Hold on one second. Okay. There. Okay, good. Now I have it. Sorry, I had lost my control panel there for a minute. Okay. So hopefully everyone that I'm talking to right now has some sort of document from their insurance company outlining, that's detailed, that outlines the scope of loss for the property that you lost, okay? The scope of loss, and we'll talk about it it's a little bit different than an estimate, but the scope of loss details the materials, the quantities, and the range of work that you need to repair or rebuild your house after the fire. And by the way, this technique that we're using here, that we're showing you, works for a partial loss or a total loss. So this is not just a total loss type of thing. You can do this with any claim, okay? The difference between a scope of loss and an estimate or bid, as they're sometimes called, is that the estimate adds prices, okay? So the scope is like what you're doing. The estimate is what you're doing plus how much is that going to cost, okay? Which is important because I'll show you. Okay, the first check is only a starting point. By now, hopefully everyone has received a first check as a starting point. You can negotiate those. You can put them in the bank, send them to your mortgage company. It just by virtue of cashing the check doesn't mean you accept the settlement. So some people have said, oh, I already deposited the check and I didn't say anything. I guess I can't do anything, but that's not true. You can keep going, okay? So what you're entitled to under the law in California is the cost to repair or rebuild, okay, your home exactly as it was before the loss, okay? Up to your policy limits, plus any additional coverages like those extended replacement cost coverage and the code upgrade coverages that I was talking before, okay? So that's what you're entitled to. So what does that mean, okay? You're gonna get this estimate from your insurer and it's gonna have pages and pages of items, okay? Some of them are 80, 90 pages long. If you've never looked at one before or you're not in the building trades, they're super hard to understand. They're very overwhelming. People tend to go right to the end and look at the money and freak out because they're like, there's no way. You know, and intuitively whether or not it's close to what it might cost to rebuild. And then a lot of you might have a contractor's bid already with a big gap between, you know, the insurer's estimate and the contractor's estimate, okay? And maybe you've reached an impasse and you don't know what to do. So that's what we're going to work on, okay? So the first thing, excuse me. I'm talking, I'm going to keep drinking. Okay, is you need to compare apples to apples. That's a big UP saying. And really what you need to make sure of is that that the insurance company's estimate actually reflects the house that you lost. So think about it. It's hard enough for the insurance adjuster to get a scope and estimate completely correct on a partial loss where you can look at what's left. It's very difficult to do a total loss, okay? And really, every insurance adjuster who's working on your claim should have spent a very long amount of time talking to you about your house and what you lost, because all the houses are not the same, okay? And in order to determine the proper cost to replace your home, you're going to need to reconcile between them and the contractor, and you need to make sure first that the scope is correct, okay? So we want to start with the scope. And the goal, and this is the insurance company's scope. And a lot of people don't see the necessity for this. They say, well, look, I've got a contractor's bid. I don't need to do that. But what happens is the adjuster has something, okay, that they think is reasonably correct, whatever. And then you send in a contractor's bid and they're, you know, $100,000 apart. And the adjuster's like, yeah, you know, it's too high. Our estimate is this and your estimate is that. Well, a lot of times the adjuster, they can't compare their estimate with your contractor's estimate if you're talking about two different houses, okay? So if theirs isn't correct, then they don't have any basis for comparison with what your contractor turned in, okay? Now, some of them are easier to work with than others. Some of them will say, oh, okay, is this what you really lost? The other thing is a lot of people, especially if you're gonna rebuild, a lot of people end up submitting a contractor's estimate for the house that they're going to build, which is different than the house that they lost. Very few people say, oh, I'm gonna do it exactly the same. And most people say, oh, you know, this was awkward about my old house, I wanna change that, or I need a fewer bedrooms or more bedrooms or whatever. So most people don't rebuild exactly what they lost. So in that case, a lot of people are like, yeah, I got the estimate to rebuild my house. They've got these changes. And then the insurance companies, yeah, we don't pay for changes. They don't have any basis to do the comparison. So that's what we're going on. So we want to help you fix the adjuster's estimate, okay? And the way to do that is don't worry about the numbers at first. The numbers end up fixing themselves to a certain extent if you fix the details, okay? So we want to first focus on the details, okay? Most important thing. Okay, and I'm going to go through this. It's really important. I mean, this slide might be a little bit out of order, but it's super important to provide the adjuster with as many pre-loss details as possible, okay? You need to know the sizes and shapes of the room, what kind of windows you had, what kind of finishes, and whatever information you can get your hands on to support that, to remind you, to help them is helpful. Make sure that you're accurate. Don't change anything. Here's a list of things you can help. Building plans. I know a lot of you lost your building plans in the fire, but there are some out there. Photos, verbal descriptions, Google Earth, Eagle View. I mean, there's a lot of things out there. Zillow. The more rural of a place you live, the harder it is to get things like Zillow or Google Earth. It's sometimes hard to see, but those are ideas. One of the things I tell people is photos of like parties, birthday parties and things like that. When you take a picture of a kid at his dining room table having his birthday cake, everybody looks at the kid, but if you go back and look at the picture, you're going to see a lot of things around in the background. You're going to see the walls, you're going to see picture, contents that you can claim, and you're going to see different things. So sometimes looking at old pictures, even if they're not specifically taken for this purpose, are helpful. Okay. So what you want to do, and this is sort of a lead in to you guys pulling out your estimates and going through them. So I want to talk to you about this. So you want to describe it in detail. So what I recommend is a visualization exercise, okay? And when we go through, and I let you guys loose with your estimates here, this is a much better live workshop because we circulate around and have people to help you and so forth. But think about right now, choose a room in your house that is relatively simple. So don't choose a kitchen because there's a lot of items in a kitchen. Choose something relatively simple. I usually say like your bedroom, okay? And just close your eyes and do a little visualization. A room that you're most familiar with that's simple. And start, you can, however you work. I start at the ceiling and work my way down. You can start at the floor and work your way up. But being systematic. So if I'm looking here, I'm sitting in my kitchen right now, and you talk about the dwelling in details. You think about what's the ceiling? How high is the ceiling? What's it made out of? Mine's just drywall. I live in San Francisco, but a lot of people like in Paradise had beautiful wood ceilings, vaulted ceilings. Don't worry about the terminology much. Just think about how they looked, okay? In your visualization, and then go down. Did they have any special condition? Rounded corners, doorway arches. Mine are all pretty simple here. Okay. I told you not to do the kitchen, but eventually you're going to have to. So when you get there, cabinets, countertops, closets. So think about your closet if you're in your bedroom first. Any built-ins, doors. How many doors? What were they made out of? What kind of trim? So some doors are like hollow core doors made out of metal. Some are solid wood, some beautiful oak. Sometimes they're very thick. So there's mine are glass. Mine are all frosted glass. So you got to think about, and so that's a perfect example of how everybody's how everybody's house is different. The only way an adjuster would know that the doors in my house and the inside have, frosted glass would be if I told them. And, things like that cost differently than different things. And a lot of times they assume, standard things. Okay, so then work your way down and think about your baseboards. Baseboards run a huge difference in what they are. You have little, small, sort of standard apartment particle board ones that are little and they're kind of press board. And then you have big, huge baseboards that are multiple pieces of wood that are, they can be a foot high in these beautiful old houses. So then think about mantles and ornaments and stuff like that. Okay. Drywall, it is not all the same. Okay, so your texture on your drywall, and then whether or not, like my house, so I rebuilt it a few years ago. I live in San Francisco, so I put in double drywall because our houses are very close to each other. So when I put in double drywall so that I wouldn't hear my neighbors. Okay, texture is also something. There's difference. I have very smooth. My walls are very smooth. Some have that, texture. There's like spray-on textures. There's like the really thick texture that used to be really popular, like in the 70s and so forth. So think about that. I mean, that's the type of detail that we're talking about that make a difference in the amount you get paid. So it seems very like picky, but it will change the amount you get paid. Okay. Same with paint. Okay. Paint, there's different types of paint. There's different types of paint. If you know the type of paint you have, if you had a special type of paint, or, you know, an expensive custom color or something, you're entitled. If there's all these like designer brands of paint out there, if you had it, don't let them give you just regular old Home Depot paint going back, okay? So that's important. Flooring materials. And I'm going through this really pretty slowly just so that you sort of get an idea of where your mind should go when you're looking through your estimates, okay? Now, same with flooring materials. There's a wide variety of flooring materials. So my San Francisco house was built right after World War II, and I had strip oak, 1-inch strip oak flooring throughout the house. So when I remodeled it, I wanted to keep it. Things like that cost a different amount than flooring that's in the big, you know, the big sheets that you put down. There's different things. So again, if you had, you know, some inlaid wood, you had a different special type of wood. Some people have bamboo floors. You're entitled to get that and not just flooring, okay? Then think about the final details, your lighting, windows. Windows probably should have been up with doors, but think about how many windows are in that room that you're visualizing. How big are they? Think about your light switches. Where were they? How many of them did you have if you're going to turn on a light? Think about outlets. Think about window coverings, so forth, okay? And then think about attached appliances. So anything built in is counted as a building item, okay?
And if I could just hop in for
Yeah,
one.
sure.
I just want to reiterate something that you've already said multiple times, but really has a big impact in, you know, the difference in not looking at price first and fixing these items having a big impact. Just a quick example that resonated with me is, you know, plaster walls,
Oh, yeah.
you know, $8, you know, per unit to replace versus sheetrock, which lands somewhere just under, you know, $2 in one of the estimates I looked at. You know, that's 4 times different from just changing one aspect of an estimate that is easily tens of thousands of dollars depending on the size of the house. So, you know, what you were saying to emphasize the fact that, like, thinking about some of these details and the cost factor could be huge for some of these items. So it's worth taking the time to really go back, look at those pictures and think about what was actually there, because it really is tens of thousands of dollars potentially.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's a really great example. A lot of people think, thanks for that, Mark. It's a great example. A lot of people, especially if you had plaster, most people don't go back with plaster. However, you're still entitled to the cost of what you lost, and you lost plaster. So you would be entitled to that. You can go back with drywall and maybe use the money somewhere else. But that is a really good point. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to show you, this is a scope of loss. Now, I'd be very surprised if any of you had one, but if any of you do, that's great. And if any of you are just starting this process, and you have a good rapport with your adjuster who did the estimate, ask them to produce one for you. It is a single push of a button to change your estimate into a scope of loss. This Exactimate program it's actually a pretty powerful program. And it's very easy for them to produce one of these. And what it does, and you'll see in letter, it gets rid of all the money, okay? And so that really allows you to focus on what you're looking at. Hold on, let me look at my next screen. Yeah, what you should look at. Okay, so what we want to do is, and you guys will probably have to use your estimate. But at this point, why don't you pull out your estimate? Choose a room that's easy. So I chose this pantry in this loss here. Choose a room and then think about what I'm gonna go through here. So right here, sometimes this is pretty easy to see. This is the little diagram of the pantry. And so this is a real simple one. Sometimes they're really complicated and really hard to see the diagram. But what you want to do is you want to figure out if the room is basically the right size. So that's the first thing you want to do. So this is basically, and try to take just the long, this is 7, 8 by 7, this pantry, okay? And so if you think, if it's hard to look at this, if you think your room is 12 by 12, look over at like the floor or the ceiling, and this should say 144. Just multiply it to see if it's right. The other thing that is super important for any of you who had houses that had non-standard ceiling heights, okay, this program defaults to 8-foot ceiling heights. So see right here, this particular house had 10.5-foot ceilings. This is an old house in San Francisco. So this had 10.5-foot ceilings. And if they don't think about it, they have to change it they either have to change it in every room, or they can change it in the whole estimate. Sometimes they forget. It's one of the really common things that people forget. There is a huge difference in pricing of 8-foot stud walls versus 10.5-foot stud walls or 12-foot stud walls. So that's a really, just changing the ceiling height changes your money dramatically. Okay, so that's the first thing. So hopefully all of you are looking at your estimate, even if it has money on it, and I'll show you another one of those. But look here, and I'll talk to you about some of the things. So let me see. Hold on. So what you want to do basically is mark it up. Okay, have a copy. Mark it up. So here, this house did have 10.5-foot ceilings, but we're pretending it had 12. So if your ceiling height's wrong, you correct that. If the dimensions of your room are wrong, you correct that. Sorry, it's my scribbling here. And then go through, first off, and I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes on your own to sort of look at your room and try to find, hopefully your adjuster has done it systematically. Okay, this one, of course, I talked about ceiling down. This one is floor up, but hopefully yours is systematic in some way. A lot of adjusters are sort of all over the place, and they do things all over the place. But so start either at the top or the bottom. Think about your flooring. Okay, so if we look here, this one had vinyl plank flooring. Some of the things you might not know about, okay, things like floor preparation and underlayment. Don't worry too much about them, but know that you need things like that. So if you have like flooring, it's got to go on something, it's got to go on. Generally houses have, a plywood subfloor, and then the flooring on top of that. So like, for instance, my house has plywood subflooring, and then it has like a little paper barrier, and then it has the wood flooring right on top of it. But if you're going to put down vinyl, any sort of vinyl, you need this underlayment. It's basically particle board. So look for that. Look for little add-ons, but then just get the high points, the things you know. How's the baseboard? Is the baseboard reflective of what you had? Is there texture for your drywall? And is it the right texture, the door? So I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to look at that, and then I want you guys to pull them out, see what it is, and then I want to take some questions from you guys. We'll do some Q&A. I can let you guys talk, and so that I'm sure that you are sort of on the same page with me. Okay, so I'm just going to give you 5 minutes. You guys can take a break if you need to use the restroom, and we'll come back in about 5 minutes. And
can I throw in one thing
Sure.
really quick, Sandy, before we go off? Something for me that I'm not very good at is guesstimating or estimating distances. Some people are good at it. They can look. My brother can look at a wall and say, "Yep, that's 8.5 feet on the spot." He'll be right. Something that sounds kind of silly but may be helpful if you have a minute here and one close by is take out a tape measure and actually open the tape measure up to 10 feet. See what 10 feet is. Look at the estimate and compare so you have something to actually look at the pictures with, compare against furniture, compare these rooms, because like Sandy said, in these total loss situations, the adjuster has no idea and it's hard to remember, you assume. So just something that helps me. It might not help everybody, but take out the tape measure if you have one close by and compare those, the wall distances, the floor, the baseboard, anything like that.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Okay, so look at your thing for a minute. I'm gonna look here. Yeah, your estimate might look like this. And before I send you off again, just to let you know, like these a legend for this. This is a quantity, and this is the cost to remove it, the cost to replace it, the tax, overhead, and profit. Forget about it right now. We'll talk about it later. But yours might look like this. So what you want to do is look at your underlayment, look at the quantity, okay, and work on that. Okay, and we'll be back in like 5 minutes. Okay, so hopefully you guys have had a chance to look at your estimates for a minute. Let me get, I don't know what's going on with the little thing here. Okay, great. So I want to take some questions. I see Donna has raised her hand. So Donna, I'm going to, okay, hopefully we can hear you now.
Okay, hopefully this question is not too early, but I want to thank you for all your help.
Oh, you're welcome.
Because we did go over our estimate and got a new estimate from our contractor. Our insurance company paid us additional monies.
Okay.
Just exactly as you said. So we had replacement costs of 150%. We almost got all that back.
Okay.
They have deposited in our account. My question is, we had not decided to rebuild or replace. If we buy something that doesn't cost the full amount, can they request the money back?
Okay, so I'll talk about that a little bit. The initial payment is actual cash value. Okay, remember how at the beginning I was talking about replacement costs. So your policies are replacement cost, but there is a provision that says that they only owe actual cash value until the property is repaired or replaced. Okay, so that initial amount, so I always use this analogy of a car. So if you buy a car and say it's $20,000 and you drive it off the lot and into a wall and total it, that day they're going to give you $20,000 because that's what your car's worth. Okay. If you drive your car for 10 years and now it's worth $2,000, if you get in an accident and total it, they're only going to pay you $2,000. They're going to pay you the actual cash value. Okay. Home insurance policies started out like that. Historically, they were only replace what you lost, and what you lost was depreciated. Okay. Through the years, they realized that building costs are more expensive and people didn't have the money to pay to buy new. So as it was kind of a marketing thing that was put into homeowners insurance policies back. So what they said was, okay, if you lose your house, now you're going to get your actual cash value up front, but when you replace it, we're going to pay you to get something new. So you're going to have new floors, new carpets. That part, that withheld depreciation, you didn't own it at the time, okay? So they're only paying you for what you owned at the time, which was the depreciated value of what you lost. You're entitled to that. They cannot ever ask for that back, okay? So the only, sorry, again. For some reason. Anyway, so if they paid you the replacement cost benefits, which is the part that you didn't own, then that they could ask for back. But anything they've paid you up front without requiring proof that you've repaired it or replaced it, they can't ask for back. I don't know why you're muted again.
Okay.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
So the deposit said additional replacement cost value based on contractors' submitted estimate, and it was paid to us, deposited on our account.
Oh. So did you have so it was based, was it based on a signed contract or was it based on just an estimate?
It was based on an estimate from contractor Corey in Paradise.
Okay, that's fine then. It's only if some of the insurers will pay that withheld depreciation, those replacement cost benefits, once you sign a contract with your contractor and then pay you those benefits. So technically, if you backed out of the contract, they could ask for those back until you did it. But if that's just based on an estimate, then you're fine.
Okay, thank you very much, since we're going to go shop for a home.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so Holly.
Hello.
Oh, hi, Holly. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you. I have a question And I hope I'm not asking too soon because I know we haven't got to the code upgrade part yet, but a lot of the people rebuilding in Paradise are having to do a lot of pre-construction, have a lot of pre-construction expenses. Like you have to have a survey done of your property. Most of the septic tanks and leach fields are trashed and have to be replaced. Are those things that should be in the in the insurance estimate, or is that even something that's covered as part of your rebuild?
Yeah, in general, those are covered as part of your rebuild. You don't necessarily have to have them in the estimate. You can have, standalone. If you get a surveyor and they send you a bill for $1,200, then you can just send that in. Or the septic tank, you can just send that in. But yeah, that pre-construction work is also part of the cost to rebuild the property.
So would that be coverages that came out of your coverage A?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, the only time that it would be something different, I mean, people are always saying, well, the survey is required by the city, is that a code? You can argue that. Like if you're out of one coverage and it's more beneficial for you to try to use the other coverage, you can always argue that. And like say that they inspect your septic tank, right? And your septic tank is trashed because the trucks drove over it or whatever. So you need a new septic tank. That would be covered under coverage A. And if they make you change your septic tank because the one you had was old and now they have different requirements, the difference between replacing the old one and whatever the code requires you for the new one, that would fall into your code upgrade coverage.
Okay, great. So we're still in the phase of getting a contractor estimate to rebuild exactly what was there, I guess.
Right.
And then comparing that. But I'm seeing based on kind of what you've just said that we should probably include in that estimate, like the survey and the septic replacement and all that.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
it's probably, it's definitely easier if it's all together, but it doesn't have to be, but it's easier if it's all together.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So anyone else have a question before we move on? How did you guys fare with your looking at your estimates? Did that seem pretty straightforward? I don't have any questions on it. I think that most of you will find, these are overwhelming when you look at it, but most of you will find that when you start breaking it down, it's a little bit more understandable. So I'm hoping that that's how you feel at this point. Okay. And I'm gonna chime in here and say that if you are overwhelmed by going through this, there are resources that we can point you to that can get you guys some help on this. So I'll show you that near the end. Let's see, Iris has a question. Does land remediation cover your foundation? Most policies do not have coverage for land. Okay, it's specifically excluded. Site preparation, oh, so you have $10,000 land. So most of that, oh good, and so Mark's working on that too. Most of the land remediation is site preparation. So foundation, the actual structure of your house, the foundation would be considered coverage A building property. The land underneath is separate. So land remediation coverage, which it's very unusual, Iris, that you even have any of that. It's good that you have it. Most policies don't even have 10,000, but it does not cover your foundation, okay? Okay, so we're gonna move on. Okay, so if you guys don't have any questions about fixing this, then let's just talk a little bit about, and if you haven't started this yet, I'm gonna go back and reiterate to contact your adjuster and ask them for a scope of loss, okay, which is an estimate without prices on it, because that'll make it a lot cleaner. and you can mark it up. It just makes it a lot cleaner, and it's very interesting. A lot of times when people go through and correct the scope of loss, then the last page, when they fix the items that were incorrect, the last page with the totals gets closer. And so then you can work from there. And keep doing this, okay? Keep making these corrections and send it into your adjuster, and with a little email that says, I've had the opportunity to look at my estimate that you prepared. I've made corrections to reflect what I actually lost. Please update the estimate, okay? And ask them to update it, mark it up, send it to them, okay? And if they send it back, check to make sure all of the things that you asked to be fixed were fixed, and then make sure, do it again, make sure everything's correct, so that in the end, when you get an estimate, you feel confident. And right now we're only talking about the descriptions, okay, and quantities. We're not talking about the amounts. So once you feel confident that this estimate reflects the home you lost, then you can move on to pricing, okay? So I think it's really interesting and to see an estimate move based on correction of the scope. I'm kind of a geek, I think it's fun. Okay, so, and the point is, once you get where you feel that their scope is reflective of the home you lost, okay, then you can start looking at numbers, okay? And this is the easiest way to do it. If you don't have this recap by category, okay, call your adjuster or send your adjuster an email and ask for it, okay? Because this is what's going to be so helpful for your contractor to give you a bid reflective of what you lost, okay? So this, I love this. And I'm going to show you, do I have a, so what I like to do, I thought I had a contractor's sample in here, but I don't. What I like to tell people to do on this is to get this recap by category, see your pricing, see about how you are, take a piece of paper, cover over all these figures, photocopy it, and ask your contractor to break their bid down into these categories, okay? The other thing that you can do, and sorry to keep going back and forth, but this scope of loss, once you get everything correct, get a correct scope of loss, because you can hand this to a contractor and know that they're basically bidding the same property, okay, the same house. And also, when your contractor takes a look at this to give you an estimate, they can come up with things that maybe are building things you don't know about. For instance, the foundation, the framing, the roof framing, all of that stuff, don't even try to look at it unless you're a professional builder, okay? Those things are gonna make your eyes cross. But if you get an accurate for the things you know, like your flooring, your baseboards, your shelving, all this stuff, for the things you know, and you get a blank scope of loss with no prices, you can give this to your contractor, and your contractor will say, hey, look, they didn't include any underlayments underneath your flooring, and you need that. They didn't include any glue down, you know, because you've got to glue this stuff down. They can add those things in for you, okay? I like to give them a blank one without prices so that you can get a true bid, you know, what they think it would cost to build. Sometimes if you give them one with the prices, they'll either give up or they'll try to meet the prices that the insurance companies, so they can get the job and build the house if you're going to rebuild, and then find out that they haven't bid enough. So I think a blind bid is a more accurate bid, and I would recommend that. So if you can get a corrected scope of loss, give it to your contractor. They're going to help you with a lot of things, okay? Then your estimate. So then have your contractor break down their estimate that you get into these same categories, okay? And then what can happen, then you know exactly where you are, okay? You know exactly where you are with respect to prices, and you can focus only on the areas where there's a difference, okay? So a lot of times you'll see, this is not a total loss. This is a partial loss, but a lot of times you'll see where you're like, okay, appliances, this is 2009 and your contractor will be, you know, 2,200, and you'll be like, okay, fine. But then you go here and the cleaning, they have 3,200 basically, and maybe your contractor has 3,000. So things like that can be a wash if it's a little bit here or there. As long as it overall matches, that's okay. But things like, so say cabinetry, 33,000, we'll say that the contractor's estimate is 45. So right there, you're like, okay, we're only, you know, a couple $100 apart on the appliances, but we're, you know, $12,000 apart on the cabinetry. Let's find out why. Okay. So you can identify those areas where you really need to dig in and see what the difference is. Okay. And most of the time you'll find that the difference, like, especially in cabinetry. So things like cabinetry have an infinite number of price ranges. You can go to really, really cheap, you know, Home Depot, particle board, whatever, to Home Depot sells high-end cabinets too. I'm not slamming Home Depot, but you can go from really low end to very, very, you know, furniture quality. Exactimate doesn't contemplate that. Exactimate has categories. So it'll have like, let's see if we have the cabinetry is in here. If I have cabinetry, well, I can show you this. I don't have the cabinetry, but I have shelving here. Standard grade. So they have grades. They have, like, see, the plank flooring is premium grade. They have, you know, high grade, they have average grade, all of that. And there's definitions of that in Exactimate, but it doesn't account for the actual cost. So if you happen to have a house where you know where you bought the cabinets, and that's great, you can kind of go and just get a bid for what you lost. Like, my cabinets are 3 years old. I could, if my receipt burned, I could go and find them. So it really doesn't account. So then you'd have to get in and say, oh, well, I had, you know, cherry cabinets with this sort of flat face, whatever sort of makes them unique. And then to justify your price. Same thing, a lot of times we see differences. This one doesn't have roofing, but a lot of times we see differences on roofing. There are different grades of shingles, different things on that. So that really allows you to compare. Okay, floor covering wood, this is, you know, 31. So you find the places where your contractor and they differ, and talk to your adjuster about how you work that out. You know, it's like, you can have a face-to-face conversation would be the best way to do it. If you have a lot of differences, your contractor can get subcontract bids. So something like electrical, right? You're not going to be able to call up the adjuster, say the electrical from your contractor is 25,000 and this one, you can't see here, 14,000, whatever. So you're very far apart. You can't just call up and say, you know, I have premium wiring or whatever, even if you do. Something like that will need probably a subcontractor bid. Okay. And if you get one or two subcontractor bids, so you ask your contractor, you ask somebody, hey, let's get a subcontractor bid for what it would cost to rewire this house, then you've got some substantial information. There's not much that they can do in terms of denying a subcontractor bid if they don't have one. And we can talk about that a little bit. I'll talk with you about the claims regulations near the end, but they've got some specific things that they have to do. Okay, so does anybody have any questions on that? Okay, so I think that hopefully now you can see that if you get it into a system. Now, most contractors, and I didn't say this, but Exactimate is an insurance industry program. It is only used by contractors whose main source of income is insurance reconstruction projects. People who have decided they're going to do and they're out there. In only insurance reconstruction, a lot of them buy this program. It's very expensive. They buy it so that it's very easy to get their bids through the insurance company, because it's in a format that the insurance company understands. Most contractors don't do that. Like if you've got a contractor going to rebuild your house, he's going to get an electrician to give him a sub bid. He's going to get bids for these subcontractors. So certain things they subcontract out, like electrical. A lot of them subcontract out drywall, HVAC. Some contract out framing. It's just different. So then if they don't, like say framing, they're going to say, okay, well, we have a 2,000 square foot house and we've got these interior walls. So they're going to figure out how much of the materials do you need, how much are they going to cost, and how much labor is going to be involved in putting them up. So then they're just going to give you like a framing bid. What you really have to understand is that, we used to joke about it back in my adjuster days, was you'd get a bid and the contractor, we'd call it R&R one house, remove and replace one house, $400,000. So the contractor knew basically what the components were, but they would submit this bid. I mean, a lot of times if you think about it, if you've ever done a remodeling project or something like that, if you say put in a new kitchen, you'll talk to your contractor, here's what I want, here's the type of cabinets and so forth. And a lot of times they'll be like, okay, you pick out the cabinets and then we'll price those. And then they'll give you a cost, and it won't necessarily be broken down. It might be broken down into, okay, your kitchen's going to be $100,000 and I want it in 4 payments. I want 30% up front. It might be broken down like that. But a lot of times it's not broken down, even though they've done the work to figure out how much it's going to cost them. So they've done it, but a lot of them aren't used to putting it into a form. Your contractor doesn't need Xactimate. I'm going to show you some people who do scopes in Xactimate if you don't plan to rebuild, and I'll talk about that a little bit too. In fact, I'll talk about that right now. Even if you're replacing your house, moving somewhere else, you have to do this in order to be sure that you get the right amount of money, because the insurance code says you are owed the cost it would be to repair or replace the thing you lost, your house, okay, at that location, up to the policy limits, plus, your extended coverage and your code upgrade coverage. So even if you're trying to move, a lot of people are like, well, I have no intention of rebuilding my house. Why would I go through all of this? Well, the reason that you would go through all of this is to get the money released from your policy, so you have more money to go buy that house. And so what you want to do is you want to reach agreement with them, okay? So like Donna was talking about, so Donna, if I can use you as an example, Donna had her estimate. She went and had a local contractor prepare an estimate that she turned into her insurance company. They do the reconciliation, they go back and forth. She gets an additional payment, and then she was saying, and this is what needs to be, she has almost all of the 150, but there might be some of that depreciation held back, that if she buys a house that costs, that costs enough, and we'll get into that, that they can release that when she spends the money. The key is you want to have an agreement before you go house shopping, so that you know exactly how much money they're going to release. I am super shocked at how many of these insurance companies won't commit. They need to. I'll show you the codes that we can work on. And if any of you have been to my WhatsApp webinars, we go on a lot about insurance code section 2051.5. And whoopsie. Oh, I have slides on this, hold on. So we talk a lot about that, and they need to do it. And some of you have reached out to me, and I've been trying to help you get them to commit to that. A lot of these adjusters have this stuff wrong. They have it simply wrong, okay? So you've got to keep working at it, unfortunately. But what you want to do, so if you're going to buy instead of rebuild, you need to do what we've just gone through, okay, to reach an agreement with your insurance company on the dollar amount it would theoretically cost if you did rebuild the exact same home that was destroyed, okay, plus code upgrades, and then into the extended benefits that are available, okay? That's what they owe you. A lot of these insurers, let's talk about code upgrades. Let's see, I looked at this yesterday. Oh, I have the code in here. Okay, so let's talk about this. This is insurance code 2051.5. So if your fire happened after September 21st of 2018, okay, which probably most of yours did, this is the law of what they owe you. And if you guys have been to my webinars before, you've seen this, I go on and on. The measure of indemnity, how much they owe, shall not exceed the replacement cost, including building code upgrade cost and extended coverage, to repair, rebuild, or replace the insured structure at its original location. I am shocked by the number of adjusters who are telling people, well, when you choose your house, we'll see what building codes they need and we'll pay you then. Not how it works, okay? Especially, and people are losing out on money because, so say for instance, you have a house that was built in the 40s, okay? So it's built in the 40s, not upgraded that much over the years. It has $100,000 worth of building code upgrades that need to be done if you were to rebuild it where it was sitting before. Okay, so say you have $100,000 in code upgrades that it needs, you have the coverage, okay, and then you don't want to rebuild, you want to move. So then you move to a place and you move to a new development that has a brand new house that's completely up to code, that doesn't need to be brought up to code. Some of these adjusters are saying they don't owe you the code upgrade cost. That is not true. So what they owe you is what it would cost to bring the old place up to code, okay? And then you can take that money. It doesn't say you have to spend it. Sorry, my dog's running around here, working at home, joys. You don't have to spend it on code upgrades, okay? That's not the bid. It's the measure of indemnity. All they're talking about is how much do they owe you. So that $100,000, so say you've got $400,000 in your coverage A and your basic dwelling coverage plus your extended, whatever. And then you get the $100,000 code upgrade. That means you have $500,000 to spend towards your replacement property, okay? The key is on extended replacement, on withheld depreciation, okay, and code upgrades, okay? So any depreciation that they apply to pay your actual cash value and your code upgrade costs, that money has to be spent in order for them to pay you, okay? So say you have $400,000 for the building, $100,000 for code, that gives you $500,000 to spend. If you spend $450,000, you would only get half of that building code upgrade coverage. You would only get $50,000 of it. Okay, so that's a really important fact. And then Freda asks, can they deduct the value of the land? Unfortunately, they can. So not all the companies do. We disagree with it. I have a big, Mark made me these great visuals. I don't think they're in this. I don't think that they're in this one, but so some of the companies do deduct it. You want to know upfront, and I'm going to tell you guys, there is a bill in the legislature right now that's trying to get rid of that. Hopefully it'll go through. Again, it won't be retroactive. It's a very tricky thing. I think, and UP thinks, that if they deduct the value of the land, you end up with a house that's worth less than the house you lost. But so one of the things that I like to do is once you've reached an agreement, okay, if you're thinking about moving, once you've reached an agreement on what you're owed, get a sample house, okay? Get a sample house that's in the price range that you're thinking about buying and send them the documentation. Here, I've got this slide here. Okay, whoopsie. Yeah. Sorry, I've got things in here. So you get your estimates, you reach an agreement on what it's going to cost. Find a home that costs at least as much as it would have cost to rebuild as it was, and send that documentation to your insurance company and say, if I bought this house, I'm thinking about it. You don't have to be thinking about it or not, but would you release all of the money? If I would do that if you don't know if your insurer is going to deduct the land value, because you don't want to give them the idea to deduct the land value. And if you just ask them, are you going to, and then they'll be like, can we? Because I've heard of some that aren't doing it. So this is a way to just make sure that they're going to release all your money. I think it's really important to know that they're going to release all of your money when you buy the house. So I think that that's something something to be done. Let's see. Donna has a question.
So as we talked before, they deposited the rest of our replacement value, or most of it. So if we go out to buy a house, and nowhere in any of our emails have they said they needed a contract for buying a house. The only place they said they wanted a contract, see that, with the code upgrades, and she gave me examples of that. So there is some additional money if we spend it. I do not know that we would even spend the total amount that they've already given us, being that we retired. Not sure. So can they come back and say, oh, well, now we're going to take off the land value? Nowhere in our communications and with the deposit into our account have they mentioned anything. And
a lot of them don't. Who are you with, Donna?
AAA.
AAA. Okay, AAA is one company that I have heard some people say they didn't do it, and some people say they did. So I think that springing that on you at the last minute would be terrible. I would really recommend that you take a sample home and run it past them. And make them tell you, because you don't want to say, hey, are we deducting land value?
Right.
And then they'll remember, you know what I'm saying? And it's not that I'm trying to be tricky. It's that I don't believe it should be done. And we're trying to rectify that in the legislature. And so drawing it to their attention. Plus, you know, I think things like that should be told to people up front.
Right.
Up front. And then the other thing that I'm going to say is that, so say they come back and they're not going to deduct the land value, regardless, try, and I understand downsizing, but try to buy as much as you can to release the money, because otherwise you're leaving it on the table.
Yes. And we're going to do that, but are we leaving it on the table if it's already in our account? That's
well, but like say the code upgrade, so they haven't paid you anything on the code, right?
Right.
So
yes,
so if you have a bunch of code upgrade coverage,
it was about 12,000.
Oh, 12,000. So that's not a huge amount, but a lot of people have, you know, $100,000. And just to back up, you guys all need a code upgrade bid that's separate from the regular house bid. So that's the key, and that's going to tell you how much they owe. Okay, so if you get a bid to bring your old house up to code and it's, you know, 20,000 and your limit's 12, then you get 12. Okay. So
And they did spell out what would needed be for the code upgrades. So I do have that.
Right. So if you go and you see a house that's, $20,000 more, and you like it, you can at least get that 12,000 released. Fred is saying that if the cost of the new home is the same or more, but AAA says they have to deduct the land value of the new home, is that correct? Yeah. So that's what we're talking about here, Freda. So, and hers is a prime example. So if they've already told her that they're going to deduct the land value. So the problem with that is that if you're buying a replacement home, you have to pay for the land yourself. Okay. If they're going to do the land value deduction, unless you don't take any more from them and just take the ACV. So, and this is sad because you're going to end up with less than what you have, but say your actual cash value without, and I see all your questions in your hand raising, so I'll get to that. Say that you have all in $500,000 with extended, with code, with everything, okay? $500,000 total coverage. Say your actual cash value, okay, is 400 without the code upgrades, okay, and with depreciation withheld, okay? You can take that ACV, that 400, and just buy a house and just never involve them again, okay? You're not going to get your other 100,000, but you're not going to come out of pocket. This is one of the reasons that I think that the land value deduction is inherently unfair, because now you're taking something that you had $500,000 and you're buying a whole property, including the land, for $400,000. So it's inherently unfair, but it might be the only way. If you don't have the money or the ability to take out a loan for that land, then it might be the only way you can do it. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
And Bruce, I'll tell you about getting a code upgrade bid in a little bit. I'll bring that up to you with the scope writers. And then Janet, we bought a house while still trying to get their estimate corrected. Should we tell them, is this going to be a problem? So Janet, I would say, and Elizabeth, I'll get to you next. Janet, I'd say at your point, it probably is what it is. The only time it would be a problem is if you can keep working on your estimate, keep getting your ACV as high as possible. The only time it could be a problem is if you were expecting all of the policy limits, including all of your recoverable depreciation and all of your code upgrade coverage. If you were expecting all that and needed it to keep going with your house, and say you didn't spend enough or they deduct the land and they're like, hey, we're only going to pay this much, that's really the only time it could be a problem. Unfortunately, it's all number scenarios when you get to that. Some people buy the house and they're like, it's fine, I can keep going, I can afford this house regardless of what they pay, so that's fine. Some people, we dealt with a gentleman down in Southern California, the Woolsey fire, who it's a terrible story, had a $2.5 million policy, okay, insured for $2.5 million. House burns down, finds another house, knows that they're going to do a land value deduction, or maybe not, I can't remember that part of it. Goes through there, they decide they're going to do a land value deduction, and the land value, he bought a place for $2.5 million, that's his insurance. The land value was $1.5 million. So they were going to subtract that. And so that's really the only place, Janet, where you can really get sideways. So know how much, so if you've already bought the house, you might know what the land value is. And see, and it depends on your insurer. There's a lot of things. If you want to talk about that, let me know.
I just want to throw in one quick thing here on Janet's question. Yeah, we don't know the numbers, so it depends. You know, is the house that you purchased more or less than the benefits you're expecting from your old house? But this is a business, you know, transaction and negotiation. At the end of the day, it's not cut and dry, as all of you know. That could be a point of leverage. If, you know, if you're moving into a house and ALE benefits are no longer owed, or this is an opportunity to close the claim. I just want to throw in that could be an opportunity to either, negotiate with your adjuster and get a final payout or boost the number a little bit. So sometimes being transparent, depending on what the financial situation actually is, could be helpful to getting policy benefits paid.
I agree. Look at your numbers and see what you have to lose. But I agree with that wholeheartedly. And some of them don't understand this to the point of saying that you have to replace your house. So say you had a 2,000 square foot rancher, and a lot of them say, oh, you have to replace it with a 2,000 square foot rancher. That is also not true. But sometimes if people do replace their house with a similar like kind of quality house, then the insurance company sometimes just pays all the benefits out. I've seen that happen too. So it's wrong, but it's in policyholders' best interest, so nobody's going to complain. So, okay, let's do Elizabeth. Can you unmute yourself there, Elizabeth? There we go. I can hear you now.
You had mentioned a few minutes back that you had some resources to help with Xactimate bids, and then you never provided those. Were you going to do that later?
I'm going to do that later. Yep.
Okay, good. And I had a second question. My insurance company changed adjuster on me. He sent me a letter. I contacted him by email and asked him to set up a call with me, and I have not heard from him since. I never heard from him again. How long do they have to get back to you?
15 days.
15, okay.
15 days, and right up until that. Where are they located? Do you know where the adjuster's located?
Well, the insurance company is located in California, but I believe the adjuster's either in Florida or Texas.
Yeah, they have different rules, so sometimes we have to remind you, and I've got it on my note here to show you guys those rules when I show you the resources. So yes, hold their feet to the fire, Elizabeth, and make them respond. Iris is asking, what if you want to buy 2 houses, each worth 50% of your house? Talk to them. See, different insurance companies have different flexibility. You know, the measure of indemnity is the measure of indemnity. So on that one, I don't know, Mark, what do you think? I don't think you can force them to buy you 2 houses.
No, I mean, you can do whatever you want with the ACV payout. Right. And if you can buy 2 houses for the ACV payout, but I'm hesitant to say that many insurers will pay you the full RC benefits if you buy 2 different houses. Yeah.
But talk to them. It just depends on how flexible they are. It's certainly within their ability to do it. So, in your case, I would just ask them. Okay, so let's get back to the program here for a minute. I really appreciate you guys asking your questions. Okay, so we talked about this. I don't know why I have 2 slides on that. Okay, so closing the gap. This is it, okay? This is what we've already talked about. The gap is between the insurance company and the contract, the actual cost. This is what we did. What we suggest is, send them the estimates. If you're at an impasse, set up a face-to-face meeting. I'm going to show you the codes that talk about what they have to do. They are required, okay? And consider hiring an expert. They're required under law. If they prepare an estimate and you send in an estimate that's higher, there are 3 options, and 3 options only for proceeding. One is to pay the difference between their estimate and yours, okay? The second one is if you ask them, you have to ask, they cannot force you, then they have to produce a contractor who's in your area, who's licensed, who will rebuild your house for the amount that they say, up to the standard, and they have to, you know, guarantee it and so forth. It's very interesting. As a side note on that, I've talked to a couple people recently who just couldn't find, who reached an impasse with their insurance company, couldn't find or wasn't able to get a contractor to reach the price, finally said, okay, insurance company, I'll use your contractor because I can't find anybody to do it for your price. They get the contractor immediately doubled his bid. To me, that's reprehensible. But anyway, and the third option on the list is that they have to do a reasonable adjustment of a reconciliation of the two claims. Okay, they have to. It's a law. A lot of them won't do it. You keep asking them for it. Ask them for it. Okay. Some of these, I'm going to show you the resources that I've been talking about. Some of these resources will talk to the adjuster about their estimate and do that sort of work. You need to be careful. They're not allowed to discuss your insurance policy coverage. They're only allowed to discuss the scope. Iris asked, what did the insurance contractor do that was reprehensible? So this is what they do. So the insurance company's contractor says the loss is going to be $100,000, okay, to do X amount of work. The policyholder goes out, gets some contractor's bids, everything's $200,000. She can't find somebody. Sends it to the insurance company. They say, nope, we have somebody who can do it for 100. Now they're not supposed to do that. Okay, that's not allowed, but they do it all the time. We have somebody who can do it for 100. Yours are too high. Okay, so they can't find anybody. They get tired of it, say, okay, we'll take your contractor to do the work, okay, for the $100,000. The contractor then comes in and says, oh, it's going to be $200,000. That's what's reprehensible. That is, to me, like, I can't even express how bad I think that is. So that I've talked to 2 people recently that's happened to. So I really, the minute the contractor doubled their price, I would have fired them and gone back to my own contractor. But okay. Yes, Iris says, isn't that proof your estimates are correct? Yes, and that's proof, and that's why I would go back to them and get rid of them. Okay. If I build a home on my property, this is Freda, and I rebuild the home at half the size, can I still get my 150% plus upgrades? The size of the house you buy or build has no bearing on how much you get, okay? And don't let your adjuster tell you that it does. So say, for instance, you have a 3,000 square foot home that burned on your property, okay? And they determine that it is, say you've got $400,000 policy limits, another 100 in extended coverage, and another 100 in code, just to make it easy. That's $600,000. So as long, and you agree that they owe you $600,000 if you spend it. So now you build a 1,500 square foot house. As long as it costs $600,000, you get all that money. Okay, so Freda, your key is making sure you reach an agreement and that the cost to rebuild your prior property meets that 150% extended coverage and upgrades. You don't get them automatically. So you don't get your 150 or your code upgrade coverage automatically. You have to make sure that the house you lost would have cost that much to rebuild. So if it doesn't quite come up to your 150 to rebuild your old house, you don't get it all. Okay, so you need, that's why you need to get the estimates, okay? Okay, let's go back in here. Hold on, I've got, okay. So these are just lessons learned, and then I'm going to show you the resources, and then we'll go through the last bit of questions. Take your time, okay? It's a year and a half later for most of you, but if you rush, you know, you'll forget something. Take your time. I tell people who are correcting the estimates, maybe either set aside an hour a day, an hour every other day, or do 1 room a day, something like that, and just bite, you know, as they say, eat the elephant 1 bite at a time. Some people ask us about paying off their mortgage. If you have a mortgage, Your insurance proceeds are going to be paid to them. Use caution, okay, and seek advice. We've seen some people who have paid off their mortgages and are retired on a fixed income and can't get a new mortgage. So that's very sad if they don't have enough money to buy a new house. Document everything in writing. If you've been with us before, where that's our mantra, keep everything in writing, keep copies. If any portion of your claim is rejected or delayed, and this is something I see very commonly. So say you ask for, I don't know, your septic tank inspection, and they say no. Ask for the policy language to support. Show me in the policy where it says that, or show me in the law where it says that. They are required to do that, okay? Lots of things get denied out the gate, so be persistent, get the facts, ask for clarification. Make sure they show you the part of the policy that they relied on and that you feel like you understand it. Keep making them explain it. A lot of people don't push their adjusters. You can be polite, but you can be persistent and push them, okay? Keeping your claim moving forward. This is key. Aim to agree on the cost of replacing what you have, because that equals how much the insurance company is obligated to pay. I say it over and over, but it's key. The most common problem we see is the settlement. You're trying to base your settlement on the home you want instead of how much it costs to rebuild the home you lost. So keep that in mind, okay? Our website, uphelp.org/samples, has a lot of samples. If your insurance company won't tell you how they calculated the payment, for your payment, ask for your claim documents, okay? There's certain situations where those would be helpful. There's letters in there. Hold on. Cursor. So there's that. I'm going to show you our website. Okay, so we have a lot of information on our website. I'm going to go through and show you, and then we can go. We'll go here. I'm going to stop sharing for a minute and go to a different screen. Okay. So here is our website. Hopefully you're all familiar with our website, okay, uphelp.org. I'm just reading Holly's question. Do the code upgrades have to be incurred cost if you are rebuilding before the insurance company pays them? Can it be a separate bid from the contractor doing the estimate of what you have? Is this the incurred cost before payout or just for if you're building? So historically, the code upgrades have been a pay-as-you-go thing, okay? You get your permit, your contractor has his estimate, they go to the building department, pull the permits, the building department's like, okay, yeah, but you need to add sprinklers or solar panels or fireproofing or whatever. The contractor would get a separate bid for those code upgrade items, okay? This is if you're building. Turn them into the insurance company, they pay it, okay? As long as you're doing the work and moving along. You just reach an agreement with them. So you're rebuilding, I'm saying, Holly. Yeah, so if that's happening, also if your contractor gives you a bid, it needs to be a separate bid, okay? And if you're rebuilding and the contractor did a code upgrade bid, and he's doing the work, so they're paying you the money, that's fine. And they find out that you need to do something else and you have coverage, you can just add it on, okay? You simply say, hey, look, we found out we need this. It wasn't included on our original estimate. Here's the bid for that, okay? So hopefully, Holly, let me know if I did not properly answer your question. Okay, so back to the website, uphelp.org. There's a few things I want to show you. First off, we have dedicated pages for different things. Most of you are campfire people. This is your landing page, okay? This tells you about upcoming events. There's our event today. These are the next two Q&A webinars I'm doing next week and 2 weeks later. We had one last week where Mike Renner, who is, he's a permits and rebuilding facilitator. He works for both the County of Sonoma and for Butte County, helping people with permits, different obstacles. So Amy is going to do a webinar on June 18th. I'll be there too with Mike Renner. So that's going to be like actual obstacles like you're having with the town or something like that. See if we can help problem solve out there. So here's all this. We have a lot of our past webinars on here. If you're underinsured, you can go online and we just did a great webinar. Amy, a bunch of attorneys did a good webinar on underinsurance. We have Q&A. We have PowerPoints for my Q&As. We have some of them recorded. So the problem with posting this, if you guys, we are recording this, and the problem with posting it is that for-profit people grab our stuff and then sell it to other people, and we are a nonprofit. We like to keep it in-house. If you want to see this as a recording, just send us an email at info@uphelp.org, and we'll send you a link so you can have this. You don't have to memorize everything. Or if you have a friend who wants to see it, let us know. But we want them to be survivors. We don't want them to be people that are trying to financially benefit from our information. Okay, so finding help. One thing that I am going to tell you is if you want a code bid, there's a contractor by the name of Corey Averill who will give you a free one, okay? And let me just find his info here. Corey is, so write this, get down your pens and pencils because I can't find his email, but his telephone number is 530-338-7872. 530-338-7872. He'll give you a free code bid. He also does, I think Donna was saying he does some lower priced estimates for people. So that could be helpful. Okay, so if you go here, find help, we have a professional help directory, okay? If you click on California, you can find, now these people, we don't guarantee their work. We don't warrant anything that they do, but these are people who we know and we've worked with in the past. We do screening for these people. We work with them so we know who they are. So if you want an attorney, you hit attorney, you hit apply, okay? And you can go through, look at them, see where they're located, see what they specialize in, and Bruce asked, will Corey do a bid for Southern California? I believe he will. He's originally from Lake Arrowhead area. He lost his home in Lake Arrowhead. So call him up. He's a really nice guy. He's been in this disaster arena for years. So if you call him up, he'll tell you. But I think he knows the codes. And a lot of it's the uniform building code. So a lot of the codes are the same. There's some differences in municipalities, but he'll tell you if he's able to do it or not. Okay, so those of you who maybe aren't, this would be recommended for people who aren't planning to rebuild, but need help getting an estimate, okay? So loss estimator appraiser, and you hit apply, okay. And there are 4 people here. I recommend you talk to all of them. See who you like and see if it's a good fit. All of them are, know what they're doing. We've heard good feedback on all of them. The pricing differs, like BW Builder was charging a flat fee. I'm not sure what it is right now. Accurate Estimates was charging, I believe, 1.5%. I think that's what the going rate is, 1.5% of the total estimate. So when I see you guys' questions, I'll get to those in a minute. Make sure if you've been paid out the total amount of your coverage B limit for your other structures and your trees, shrubs, and plants, make sure that they don't estimate those, okay? Just tell them not to do them. Tell them only to do the main dwelling because it'll cost you less to get your estimate. So these people aren't going to rebuild your house. Actually, they can. Reconstruction Advisors, I think they're building a bunch of houses in Paradise. Accurate estimates doesn't build, but BW Builder might be rebuilding, doing some rebuilding. But for the most part, they just provide these estimates. They're very good at getting them through the insurance company. Again, remind them they can't talk about coverage. They can only talk about your estimate, okay? So Karen, whoa, I just lost a question here. Oh, okay, Karen asked a question that, okay, that will go, yeah, send that to UpHelp, info@UpHelp, and I will work on those next week. So we're gonna sort of stick to these. Okay, the other thing I wanna show you guys is the California Fair Claims Settlement Practices Regulation, okay? This is really important. It's on the department, sorry, I've got this blocked. It's on the Department of Insurance's website, okay? But if you do Fair Claim Practices Regulations, here it is. It looks a little bit overwhelming. There's only a few places that you can look. So first off, representation of policy provisions and benefits. This is really important. Every insurer shall disclose to a first-party claimant or beneficiary all benefits, coverage, time limits, provisions, okay? If they spring the land on you, or if they haven't advised you of your extended replacement coverage, which I'm very shocked. I've talked to a lot of people lately who they're like, I didn't even know it existed. You can go back and show them this and say, look, you had the duty to show me right away what, you know, what my policy benefits were. You didn't tell me this. I'm working with a family who they weren't told. They went out and bought a house way less. They had 200% extended coverage that nobody told them about. They didn't have the money to buy anything else, so they bought down, much to their detriment. And so that this is something there. The other thing is this duties on receipt of communications. Okay, this is where I can't remember who asked, but if upon receiving any communication from a claimant, you're a claimant, anybody making a claim under the policy, regarding a claim that suggests a response is expected, 15 calendar days. Okay, very, very important. Want to see what else. If you go back, I'm just sort of showing you this just so that you know they're here. Additional standards. Okay, some of this is auto, so and some of it's training and so forth, but additional standards to first party claims. Okay, this is what I was talking about. First off, they can't require that an insured have the property repaired by a specific individual. Okay, they can't even suggest or recommend. Okay, unless the referral is specifically requested by the claimant has been informed in writing. Okay, and this is the one that we're talking about. If they're hanging their hat on an estimate that they wrote or a contractor wrote for them, then go here. If losses are settled on the basis of a scope and or estimate prepared by the insurer or for the insurer shall supply the claimant with a copy of the document, reasonable steps to verify that it's accurate. Okay, if the claimant contends, based on a written estimate which they obtain, that the repairs will exceed the written estimate prepared by the insurer either shall pay the difference. Okay, this is the one I was talking about. Provide them with, only if you request, you can bypass this. You can say, I do not request, okay? They can provide you a contractor, or 3, reasonably adjust any written estimates and provide a copy to the claimant, okay? So that's how you can force them to do this reconciliation that we've been talking about, okay? So that is that. I want to go back to our website really quickly and just show you guys also to use the search bar. We're in the process of launching a new website. It's going to be a few months, but we're really excited about it. In the meantime, the search bar, you can search things like depreciation. And depreciation guides aren't really a thing anymore. Sometimes you have to go through and scroll down a little bit, but so then we have things on depreciation that'll explain all this. A really good one, if you want to go through, is buy or rebuild. And we have everything that I talked about today is here, okay, on buy or rebuild, and it talks a lot about this, okay? So those are really good resources. If you have problems finding something, info@uphelp.org. Carolyn's really good at pointing people along those lines. So it's 11:55. We have, let's see if we have a hand up. Holly.
I think I typed my question after I raised my hand. Sorry.
Oh, okay, great. So did I answer your question?
Well,
to your satisfaction?
I guess so. I'm trying to help my parents with their claim, and they're trying to decide if they're going to rebuy or rebuild. They don't know yet.
Okay.
And part of one of their major determinants is they need to get kind of what you're talking about, the most out of their insurance policy. My mom is very focused on, she needs to know how much she has before she can commit to rebuilding. She wants
Very
to know.
reasonable.
Right. And so I'm wondering if that code upgrade portion, if you have a contractor estimate or bid a separate one, like you're saying, is that something that the insurance company will actually pay out, or do you actually have to be rebuilding and incurring those costs before they'll pay that out?
No, you don't. You don't have to rebuild to get it. You have to spend it. So say that she gets a bid and it's $50,000 worth of code upgrades. You can either use it to rebuild, or you can take that $50,000 and roll it into the money that you have to buy a new house.
Okay. And then once it's given to you, it's not like if you don't end up using it all, you're not having to prove
No, they're not.
Okay.
They're not going to give it to you until you spend it. So it would be released in like escrow. So they're not going to get that code upgrade coverage and that withheld depreciation. They're not going to give it. They're not going to pay it until it's spent. So you'd either be building and using it to build, or you'd be in escrow. A lot of them, what they do is they say, okay, yes, we owe you $50,000 in code upgrade money. When you enter a contract to buy a new house, we'll roll that $50,000 into the escrow account.
Yeah, I want to point out that spent doesn't necessarily mean you have already spent the money and they're reimbursing. Spent means, like Sandy just said, you have a contract to spend as well. It encompasses both.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
But they're not going to just hand it to you at like the actual cash value. It's going to have to be spent.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, you're welcome. Anyone else? We've reached kind of the end of our thing, but we can take one more question if anybody. Let's see, we have one more Q&A. AAA is refusing to give me an updated exactament estimate. Should they give me an updated one? So Freda, I'm not sure what you mean by updated. Have you sent in corrections? Because if they gave you one a year ago, it'd be the same one unless you've done like what we went through today, marked it up and sent it back. And in that case, you would be able to tell them to send you a new one. Yeah, so good. Bruce, do we have to get a separate bid for each code upgrade? I'm not sure I understand the question. So you can get one bid that puts in all, sprinklers, electrical. You can group them all together, but you just need a separate bid from the building bid so that they know that they can take it out of the other bucket of coverage. Okay. Anything else? We're right on time. Thank you guys for taking 2 hours out of your Saturday to join us. I hope that this results in lucrative for you guys, and you feel a little bit more empowered to go and oops, why am I not here? Stop share. A little more empowered to go and get what's owed to you under your policy. If you have any other questions, feel free, so we have 2 more questions, to join our, oh, thank you guys, to our webinar on the 11th. Whoopsie, hold on, I have 2 more things, sorry. I forgot. Screen share. Go back here. We've got 2 things that are important.
Yeah, I have one more comment after those 2 things.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so the first off are the webinars. The next one's June 11th. I forgot to put in June 18th. I didn't think it was completely scheduled, but there is one June 18th. Look at the website for that. And also we have a survey. So these surveys are really important. You might see our name in the news quite a bit. Amy Bach, our executive director, is a very, very well-respected voice in the insurance industry, and legislators and news people and everybody come to her for the consumer side, the consumer voice in the insurance industry. And so we use these surveys to provide places like legislators and the Department of Insurance, and to say, look, you know, people are underinsured. There's a problem in this area. This coverage is working. This coverage isn't working. So if you could go to uphelp.org and take our survey, we would really appreciate it. We also want to thank, as I said in the beginning, we are entirely funded by grants and donations. The Paradise is funded by the Butte Strong Fund through the North Valley Community Foundation. We've got a grant from the California Community Foundation and the Center for Disaster Philanthropy. So we really, really appreciate the funds that these different foundations provide that allow us to do this work for free for you. Okay, stop the share, and then Mark.
So I apologize, I'm going back about an hour now, but I just want to touch on it very quickly and just point out once again, you know, Xactimate is the program that these insurers are using and they're depending on, but it is not the say-all, end-all, be-all. Pricing is done a little bit weird and different from your contractor bids. They use unit pricing, and I know this is a topic that's been discussed before, but I just want to point out that you can negotiate around using this software, and there are a few areas, I guess, where you don't have to take those numbers as final. So just a small plug, but just keep that in mind.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. Okay, so if we don't have any questions, it's noon. Thanks again for taking 2 hours out of your Saturday. I hope this works out well for you, and have a great weekend. Okay, thanks, guys.